Are you finding things tough at the moment and it's really hard mentally to keep going and you want to have the right mindset? Well, today I want to talk about mindset for when things get tough. And if you stay until the very end, I have an extra point for you then as well. Now, just before we dive in today, I want to mention that if you're a man or you know a man who could really benefit from talks on men's mental health and growth, then check out my latest and new podcast that is linked in the show notes below, particularly on that subject. Okay, so I've shared this quite a lot this year, but I'll keep sharing it. I had a very challenging or growth couple of years, let's call it 2022 and 2023, because those were the years. 2024 is not always smooth. I'm going to be honest with you. There are times where things are really tough. And one of my things this year is about expression and being very honest. I think there's a lot of people out there who claim everything's okay and therefore it makes other people feel bad. You know, you see a lot of people killing it's an easy life for someone, and they're not sharing the true story. And it's completely up to other people, but I've discovered that there's a lot that actually goes on behind the scenes with people. And one of my things is I want to be as honest and transparent as possible. Now, I'm not obviously going to share necessarily my deepest, darkest secrets. Not that I got deep, dark, crazy secrets or anything like that. But like my very deep vulnerabilities, perhaps, that I would share to close to me. I'm not always going to shout that to the world, but I do want to be open as possible. And I found in the last 2 years things kind of a lot of grief coming up. And grief doesn't mean like I lost someone. I haven't lost anyone in 2022, well, in terms of death anyway, and 2023. Grief can be a loss of a relationship, can be a loss of a job, loss of a business, can be many things. Loss of identity, the old you into a new you, old behaviors into a new you. And I've certainly found that in many, many different ways. And the job thing, the relationship thing, changing certain habits, it's caused actually quite a lot of repressed and suppressed grief from many years of grief that I'd never really processed to come up. And then there's also been challenges in day to day. Like I run 2 jobs, I run a podcast. The podcast obviously is very fun. It's a form of expression. But you know, I run 2 they can be intense jobs at certain times in like project management and sales. And therefore sometimes I have to be very careful of my time and energy. And also I want to relax, of course. Well, close as relaxed as I can is like my sports and things like that, and exercise. Yeah, I found for me that training my mind has been absolutely essential. When I haven't, I've noticed. I found that training the mind is like training the body. If you go, and I did a half marathon recently, if I went to a half marathon, I've not actually run a marathon, that's next on the list, or maybe a tough mudder. I was talking to a mate earlier and we were planning to do one. It's when you go through a lot of these really hard obstacle courses basically on a long period of time. Anyway, like if you went and showed up for one of those things without really training, or maybe training once or twice, how would you get on? Probably not very well. You probably really struggle, maybe not finish it, right? Well, the same's with training the mind. If like a load of hard things come in and you haven't trained your mind to deal with challenging situations, you know, there's always going to be things that hurt us. Like if I go to a half marathon, no matter how much I trained, it's still going to hurt me a little bit, right? So the thing is, we can be more prepared though. And training the mind, the mindset is not a thing for me when things go bad. Oh, okay, I'm going to start working on my mind. It's ongoing so that I prepare myself for life. And it's not saying life's bad or life's always going to be hard. It's just about really working through those kind of things. And I'll ask you this. How does it feel maybe when you're like not working on your mind. And I'm not saying you got to spend like 3 hours every morning on your mindset. No, we're going to go through some practical points in a minute. But like, how does it feel when like suddenly challenges come in and maybe you've been feeding your mind with junk? When I say junk, things that don't make you feel good, like listening to things that don't make you feel good, not doing the things that make your mind feel good. It probably makes it a lot harder, right? Yeah, well, I've certainly been there as well. I've been like, when I've been listening to or reading the wrong things on social media, or perhaps not listening to as many uplifting podcasts, and then suddenly things get hard. Well, it makes it even harder because I've not been training my mind. So here's a few points that I was kind of just give you a little bit of guidance to develop your own kind of routine and things for training your mind. The first one I found an essential is breath work. Why breath work? Breath work really allows me to get more of my body and actually clean out some of the emotions that are stored in my body, not just the mind. And therefore that leads to having a more clearer mind because I'm able to shove out or clear out some of those trapped emotions in the body. Meditation is the next one I'm going to cover. Allowing observation of my thoughts really allows me to separate from them and realize I am not them. Saying I am an anxious person is going to you're going to identify as an anxious person. Instead, it's completely different from saying I am a human being experiencing in this moment the feeling or emotion of anxiety. Those are two different things. Or I used to, like, this is thing I'm working on. I am stressed. I am not stressed. That is not who I am. I'm a person that happens to have adopted a behavioral pattern of experiencing stress. Now, what that allows me to know is that I can actually change that pattern. So meditation is really good for observing these emotions and realizing they're not part of you. Now, if you want to identify as I am joy, I am excitement, that's great. Feel free to do that. All right. So journaling, really getting my thoughts from my head onto paper really helps me. Now, the way I journal is ask myself empowering questions because they can only lead to an empowering answer. Exercise, very simple one, but easily forgotten. Mix it up, cardio, HIIT training, weights, right? There's a lot of research you can do online, lots of influence out there on health and some good ones, right? If you want any recommendations, let me know. In terms of like PTs and specific like people I would follow in nutrition. But it's really good for the mind. Next one, nutrition itself. Nutrition is really, really important, or your diet. If you don't feed the brain healthy food, but you're trying to do all this mindset work, it's not going to be as effective because it's like you're working on the software in your computer, but like you're just destroying your hardware. Is your laptop going to work as effective? Probably not. No, it won't. Or it might not even work at all if you get to a certain point, right? So make sure you're taking in good quality food as well. And again, hire a nutritionist, a PT if you need it. There's plenty good appetite. Get an accountability partner at a very late minimum, like I do. And then just planning a routine around all of these things that I've talked about. That can be really, really effective so you can get your mind sorted with that. Okay, final point for you that really kind of pulls this all together. Just to mention though, again, that if you want specific guidance on men's mental health, maybe you're a man or you know a man who could benefit of it, I have my brand new podcast, the Men's Mental Health and Growth Podcast, listed in the show notes below. My final point I want to end on is something called stop the monster while it's a baby. It's something I learned from one of my mentors. And what I mean by this is often like these huge emotions can come up like, oh my God, I've seen something, or I had this thought, now suddenly I feel really stressed or really down. What my mentor taught me to do is practice feeling bad in advance. Sounds crazy, right? Why do you want to go and feel bad deliberately? Because when something shows up, you've already trained yourself to deal with it. And that's catching it as a baby. It's like, okay, that's a little bit of an issue in the back of my mind. I'll just leave it there, right? Then suddenly it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're like, I can't deal with it. It's overwhelming. Your body goes into this like fight or flight response, stress response. Well, if you train yourself, I found, and there's something called the stop technique that's particularly good with this. If you want more details on that, connect with me on social media. I'll send you some guidance. But yeah, like if you're able to like feel bad and then keep interrupting the pattern, this is what the stop technique is. And like you allow yourself to feel bad and you do something to feel good and you keep interrupting that, when actually it shows up, it's not going to be such a big monster because you'll be able to deal with it in the moment because you've practiced in advance, right? So you're practicing interrupting feeling bad in advance. It's a proactive thing you can do at the start of each day or at the end of your day. So that's what I got for you today in terms of like mindset. If things are seeming really tough, those are some points I want to share with you. So I appreciate you for being here. You'll improve other people's lives by being the best you. And remember, you are in control of your own self-esteem and confidence.